Hello everyone. Today we're going through payroll processing in salary.io. I'll guide you through the steps you need to take for processing payroll in the system. We'll start with a quick look at payroll basics. Then I'll walk you through the system itself, showing you how to input data, process payroll, and generate reports. Let's go over the agenda for this training. We'll cover the three main payroll activities, then post-payroll activities, retro pay, and how to generate the payslip from the mobile application. At the end, we'll cover payroll reports. The system will allow us to handle different scenarios based on business needs and show you how to run the payroll activities. We'll see how to manage pre-payroll and post-payroll activities within the system. This will also enable us to download or view payslips from both the system and the mobile application. A prerequisite for this training is that you should have completed the VA 100 and HRM 100 trainings. Let's start with the payroll process itself. Payroll is how a company ensures employees get paid accurately and on time. It involves calculating their pay, deducting things like taxes and other deductions, and making sure the payment is processed promptly. It also includes keeping track of hours worked, overtime, and employee benefits. So, simply put, payroll is about making sure employees are paid accurately and on time while staying compliant with the necessary laws. To start payroll processing, you first need to understand the configuration setup in the system. This helps ensure payroll runs smoothly. It's important to have all the necessary configurations in place before you begin. This includes configuring the HR system and HR settings, setting up payroll definitions, payroll periods, and defining the holiday calendar. You also need to configure input values, component classification, and charges. You might need to integrate with the finance module, configure the definitions for payroll components, link the created components, and define any global values that apply consistently. Setting up table structures, values, and database functions is also part of the configuration. Finally, you might need to write formulas based on your organization's requirements and what you expect the results to be from those calculations. To begin with the key process flow, there are certain windows in the system that you need to maintain before you can process payroll. This includes the Employee Personal Information window. Here, you define the employee's personal details, such as their bank account information, marital status, and nationality. Beyond personal details, you'll move on to the Employee Work Information window. Here you link the employee's work-related information. This includes the department, position, grade, the organization they work in, and which payroll group they belong to. You'll also set their assignment status and include statutory information like their EPF number, ESI number, and whether they contribute to income tax. Additionally, you'll need to link the relevant payroll components to the newly joined employee and configure any non-recurring components that the company might pay out in specific months. Next up is the employee dependent information. For things like income tax calculations, it's necessary to enter spouse information if an employee is married. You can use this section for spouse details and also add child information if applicable. Then we have features like batch component entry, assignment sets, and component sets, which help manage components efficiently. The payroll run window is where you'll go to actually execute payroll for all the employees. We also have processes and reports related to retro pay, including processing retro pay, rolling back retro reports, viewing retro pay results, and managing retro assignments. So let's start with a use case, and then we'll dive into the live session in the system. The Employee Work Information window is used to update details related to work and assign payroll components to employees, whether they are new hires or existing staff. This is also where changes like salary updates happen, and it includes managing components for things like unpaid leave and attendance deductions. The HR administrator initiates this process to update the data. The HR administrator logs into the system and selects an employee to either update their record or onboard a new joiner. For a new employee, HR needs to enter the details regarding salary components. For existing employees, HR updates things like the employee's salary, position, and other work-related details. Once the employee record is updated, payroll components are assigned. HR makes sure that the correct payroll components, like salary, basic salary, bonuses, or any deductions, are assigned or updated for the employee. Besides payroll components, Attendance and leave information is also required. HR will update attendance records and any unpaid leave before processing payroll. The payroll components related to unpaid leave and attendance are directly linked to the employee profiles. So here, we have a small workflow outlining the process for employee work information updates. The user starts the process and creates or updates the employee's work information. They then update or create the payroll components for the employee. After that, they update or create any unpaid leave data if applicable. And here, we end with the process for updating employee work information before payroll. Now let's move on to the user case execution in the system. HR can log into the system and update or create these details. After logging in, they'll navigate to the employee work information payroll window. They can update the payroll name, create or update the payroll and leave components. For any salary changes, HR updates the amount and sets the effective date from when the changes are valid. Any additional or non-recurring components HR needs to tag to the employee will be added, and then they save the record. So we can start with the login for this case. This is the login page where you log in with unique credentials. So where I logged in with as an employee. So when we logged into the system, this is a small dashboard you see on the landing page. Now we'll go to the menu and navigate to HR Management. In HR Management, you'll find details for various modules. Now first we'll move to Workforce Management. This is where a payroll admin would update information for a newly joined employee. So, I'll go to the Employee Work Information Payroll window. This is the landing page here. You can see information about new joiners, exits, and some advanced search options, as well as reports related to work information details. Now we will go to the window view. Here we'll select the new employee record that was created by HR. This is an employee record. So here we can see the basic details of this person. Now we'll go to the Employee Work Information tab. Here you can see all the information is filled by HR, except for the payroll information. For the payroll name field, a payroll admin would typically be responsible for this activity. We can set up access levels so a regular HR executive might not be able to access the payroll details of an employee. This allows us to differentiate access, where an HR executive only accesses minimal employee information, while a payroll person handles all payroll-related activities, including the sensitive payroll data. So here we are going to add the payroll name. I've selected monthly here and saved the record. Now, on the right side, we have the Action panel. In this panel, on the right side, we have Generate Element Entry. Basically, this is a process that helps us easily assign the predefined payroll components and leave-related components to a newly joined employee. This way, the user doesn't need to create each record one by one and create multiple records manually. If I go to the Payroll Component Details tab here, you can see there is currently no record found, as no components have been linked to this employee yet. Now we'll proceed with generating those element entries using the process. So I'll click on this process. Once the process is executed, on the bottom of the screen, the user can see that the record has been saved in the Component Entry section. So all the components related to leaves and payroll are automatically assigned to the employee through that process. Now, we'll check the payroll components that were added. We'll go to the payroll component definition. Here, we have some components that are triggered based on the defined gross salary. This means the system will automatically calculate the value for these components based on the gross salary entered. Let's start by adding the gross salary for this employee. For that, the user will select the component here as gross salary and will set the start date. The start date here will always be the employee's joining date, and we'll save the record. Now we'll go to the Payroll Entry Value window, click on the New Record button. Here we'll enter the value for the gross salary. So, wherever we are calculating a value based on things like the number of days worked, we need to select the input value type as amount. But wherever we are giving a fixed value to an employee, in that case, we are going to use the pay value. So now we are entering the gross salary here. We'll select amount. based on the input type selection, the data type field will automatically populate. And here I'm giving the value of 40,000 as the gross salary amount, and save the record. So whenever we are linking a component to an employee, the system will ask for the effective date for the value you've entered in the entry value. So this gross entry, the 40,000, is applicable from the employee's date of joining. So here I am giving the 1st of March 2025 as the start date for this value, and save the record. So the record is created, and on the right-hand side, we have one more option called Zoom Across. When a user clicks on this option, a version history is created automatically. And here we can see the first version is created, as we had defined the gross salary of 40,000 for this new employee, which is applicable from March 1st. So the user can verify these details here. Anytime we change the value of the gross salary, we can see the various versions of that change history in this particular window. Important note: ensure that versioning is enabled on the Employee Work Information tab for both organization and payroll fields, and on the Payroll Entry Value tab, specifically on the Amount field. If versioning is not enabled on these screens, the Payroll Run screen will not generate the payroll calculation results. Now we'll go back to the main employee record, and here you can see the gross salary is now linked to this employee. Now we'll also look at the information components, specifically related to leaves. Here we can see that for each leave type, we have some accrual plans defined. We need to assign these to employees so they can see their leave balances in the system. When we ran the Generate Element process earlier, these accrual plans were automatically assigned to the employee based on their joining date. Whenever the employee takes any type of leave, whether it's annual leave or unpaid leave, the record of days taken will be visible here in this particular tab. Next, we have the Batch Component Entry feature. Batch Component Entry is essentially a way to upload data in bulk for payroll components that aren't recurring, like bonuses or one-time allowances, for multiple employees at the same time. The system allows the HR or payroll team to upload this data using a single file, and the system verifies it for accuracy. Once the data is verified, the components are added to the respective employee's records. This streamlines the process significantly and helps reduce errors from manual data entry. Here we have the use case for this. The company is giving a bonus to all employees in the month of April, along with their regular salary. HR needs to assign this bonus component to all eligible employees before processing the payroll for April. Here we have the workflow for using the batch component entry. The payroll admin starts the activity by creating a new batch, filling in all the required fields, and then saving the batch record. For the bulk upload part, the user will upload the file containing the bonus data using the Load Batch Data function. Then, they will verify the data within the batch and process it. Once that initial process is executed, the system will prompt the user to validate the data to check for any errors. So once the data is validated, the user will transfer the data to the employee records. And here the process ends. The component, in this case, the bonus, is attached to all the relevant employees in the Employee Work Information Component Entry section. For this execution case, HR or the payroll admin will log into the system to update or create the batch component entry. The user will navigate to the batch component entry window and create a new record. They'll enter the batch name, action type, batch type, specify the payroll being used, and the relevant payroll period, and then save the record. They'll click on the Load Batch Data button and upload the prepared Excel file. The component details and employee data from the file will be added into the corresponding tabs within the batch record. Then, they'll click on the Process button. The system will validate the records in the batch and then transfer the components to the Employee Work Information Component entry for each employee. So, let's start with the practical execution of this case in the system. Now, let's move on to the Batch Component Entry screen. The payroll admin will go to the Workforce Management folder. Within this, under the Pre-Payroll Action folder, we have the Batch Component Entry. So the user will click on this, and a new screen will open from where we can create a new batch. Using advanced searches, the user can navigate to existing records and see the batch details which we will create in this month will be available in this view. The user will click on Create New Batch, which will enable all the mandatory fields on the screen. Here, we are naming the batch, Bonus April 25, and selecting Payroll as the batch type. For the action on the batch, we will select Create New Entry. We will then select the payroll name and the period in which we are going to pay this bonus. So I'm selecting monthly 4th April here and saving the record. Now, on the header screen, we have a button called Load Batch Data. This feature helps us to upload bulk data very quickly. When we click on Load Batch Data, the system will show a confirmation pop-up asking if we want to start this process using an Excel file. We will confirm it by clicking OK. Another dialog box will open and we will select the file from here. We will click on the file selection area, select the Excel file I have prepared. Click Open, and then click OK. Once the Excel file is uploaded into the batch component entry, on the bottom of the screen, the user will see a message confirming that the Excel was uploaded successfully. Now we'll go to the Batch Component tab within the batch record, and here we can see that one component has been created here automatically based on the data in the file. Now we'll move on to the Batch Employee tab. So here you can see that data for 8 employees has been filled in this screen by using the batch component entry upload. Now I will show you the Excel file itself, which I had prepared before transferring the component data to the employee work information. This is the Excel file which I created to upload the bonus payment data for these 8 employees. In this file, we need to structure the data in a simple format. Here, I've given the batch name as Bonus April 25, matching what I entered in the system. And here I need to define the component name, which is bonus. Then I need to list the employee numbers of the individuals who will receive the bonus. Here the input value should be pay value, because there is no proportional calculation needed. We are giving a fixed amount to all these employees. That's why I have added pay value in this column. In column E, I have listed the amount, which is the bonus amount itself. And in the last column, I have given the effective date as the 1st of April, since I am going to pay this bonus in the month of April. The effective date is not mandatory when using batch component entry for something like a bonus, but if the user is uploading data for something like overtime, where the calculation might depend on the date or period, in that case, the effective date is mandatory to fill in within the batch component entry file. Now we'll start the process of transferring the bonus component from the batch to the actual employee work information records. So, the user will click on the Process button. When we click on the Process button, a small screen or a pop-up will open to confirm whether we want to start this process or not. The system will give a message indicating that whenever we are processing this component, it will be tagged to the component entries on the employee records. We have the option to run this process in the background by marking this checkbox as true, or we can skip that. As of now, I'm skipping this and I'm clicking on OK. And when we click on OK, the system will first ask whether you want to transfer the component or to validate the component. Whenever we are transferring the component to the component entry, first we need to validate the data within the batch to ensure there are no errors. If we directly click on Transfer without validating, the system will give another message reminding us to first validate the data. For example, here I'm selecting Transfer. And I'll click on OK. So the system will give the message on the bottom of the screen, please validate batch before transfer. So we need to validate first before we can transfer the data. So here I'm selecting the type as validate, click OK. And here you can see after the process, we found some error indicated. If you see an error in the status field for any record, you need to figure out why. You'll go into the batch component section and then to the batch employee tab. If we open these records, you can see that for 7 employees, the record is validated successfully, but for just 1 employee, we got an error. And the message says the employee is terminated. This means I added this employee to the file, but their assignment status in the system is set to terminated, either by mistake or on purpose. So, you would need to first correct that employee's record in the system if it was an error, or remove them from the batch if they are truly terminated and shouldn't receive this component. Then you'd validate the batch again. For this demo, I'll just process and validate the remaining ones. so I'm going to process this again and validate. So here you can see the status is marked as validated for the remaining records. Now I'm going to transfer the component to the employee work information component entry. So here you can see on the bottom of screen, components transferred successfully, we got the message. If we go back to the batch component entry record and look at the batch employee tab, you can also see the status here indicates that the values were transferred for all the processed employees. Now we'll check this component for one employee to verify whether the bonus component has been assigned to their record or not. Now I'll go to HR Management, and then the Employee Work Information Payroll window. Go to the window view, and select an employee from the list, say this one. Go into the Work Information Entry record. Open it up, and go to the Employee Component Details tab. So here you can see the bonus component is now added for this employee. When I click on this bonus amount, here you can see the information we had given in the Excel file, the component name, the input value, the amount, and the effective date. So all the details we uploaded are in place in this particular tab Details. This information, the details of the batch upload, can also be seen in the batch employee window itself. Now we'll move on to the landing page for batch component entry. If we refresh this page, you can see the data is now appearing in the charts. In the first chart, we can see the top 10 payroll batches this month. If we had different payroll batches, we could see the details of the employee count within those top 10 batches. Right now, for this month, we only have one batch called Bonus, and it includes 8 employees. The second chart shows the top 5 components. Currently, we only have one component processed this month, the Bonus, and the employee count is 8. Then we have the 10 components with highest value in this month. This shows that for 8 employees, we have processed $12,000 in bonus amount this month, in the April month. So you can see the total amount processed as well in this chart. Another feature we have available in the batch component entry section is the rollback functionality. So, if there is any issue with the amounts that were transferred, or any amendment we need to make, perhaps we need to add one more component, or remove some employees from this batch, or even add additional employees. Instead of creating a whole new batch from scratch, we can simply amend the existing batch. So, the user can easily roll back the batch, make the necessary amendments to the data, and then process the batch again. When we click on the rollback button, all the entries that were created in the employee component entry section from this batch will be reversed back. The components will be untagged from the employee's records. For example, here we can see the bonus amount component that we previously assigned to this employee. Now, we'll proceed with the rollback functionality for this batch. So I'll click on the rollback button. When I click on the rollback, the system is confirming and giving a message that whenever we roll back the entries, those are also transferred to the employee component entries. So I'll click on OK to confirm the rollback. And you can see the rollback button is now disabled from the header tab, and the status remains as unprocessed. On the bottom of the screen, we see the rollback was successful. When we go into the batch component and batch employee tabs, you can also see the status there is marked as unprocessed. We'll verify whether the entries were actually reversed from the work information, so I'll go back here and refresh. And here you can see, the bonus component is no longer visible in the employee component entries. So, when we use the rollback functionality, the system reverses the entries from the employee work information records. That was it for today's training. Please continue with us in the next part of our Salary.io training, where we will cover other functionalities in detail. Thank you.